On. So hello everybody. Welcome to Students for Political Engagement series on the 2022 York Region District School Board Student Trustee elections. And so today we have an interview with the candidate for West Region, Yael Lazebnik. So welcome, Yael.
Hi, thank you so much, Matthew and Sean. Welcome.
Yes. So I think to begin, why don't you just introduce yourself to everybody who's watching, and some facts about yourself you would like to share.
Sure. Uh, Hi, my name is Yael. I'm a grade 11 student at Thornley Secondary School. My interests include art, philosophy, and biology. I plan to go into veterinary medicine when I'm older. And I do a lot of stuff in my community and in school, like debate, air cadets. I run an arts and technology award show. And I also volunteer at an animal clinic. And I'm really hoping to be a good candidate for the student trustee election. So, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, this sounds interesting. So the next question is, why do you want to run for student trustee?
Right. So, I think for me, it's a combination of different factors. I more personal reasons is I think it would be a really good leadership opportunity. And I just think it was something that would have been really great to challenge myself. Even getting here, this was pretty challenging for me. But if we look at the bigger picture, I think this is a really great chance to make changes, sustainable long-term changes in the YRDSB, and just make sure that students are not only having a good time in school, but they are prepared for life after school, which I think is something that's kind of neglected in the board policies. And that's why I really wanted to run to change that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Very interesting. So the next is, what do you plan to do with your platform and how will you achieve your goals?
Right. So I've said this a lot, like in my Instagram and debate, but my platform is founded on three pillars, which is environmentalism, mental health, and financial literacy. So I plan to achieve that by, having these values such as, equity, inclusivity, diversity, and having these focuses, which I just listed out, and by coming up with ways like action plans to put that into effect. So for environmentalism, this could look like green bins at schools. So that way, the waste that's going to landfills is reduced because some of it is, actually biodegradable. For mental health, I have a lot of different ways we could do that. So one idea is to have weekly mental health check-ins in every classroom, to make sure that both students and teachers can have an idea of how the student is doing in the course, and just provides like a moment of reflection for the student. And also, I wanted to create a website or a social media page that would provide study tips, because I think that's something that schools don't really pay attention to, is how to actually teach us how to study. They give us the work and then they tell us, you should get good grades and stuff, but some people just don't know how to effectively study, and it's causing them a lot of stress and wasting a lot of their time. So I think that would really help out. And finally, for financial literacy, I would like to run monthly workshops with the help of local business owners and, financial officers, people who specialize in finance, every single month, to give students an idea about stuff like taxes, budgeting, investment, debt, because those are things you have to like take a specific course for in high school. But not everyone wants to do that, they just want to get the information.
Yeah, I think the next one you touched on a little bit in your answer, but what are some pressing issues that students are facing today that you would like to address?
Right. So the way that, I kind of chose what was important for me was by really reflecting on like what's important for students right now, like what are their values, because I think it's very specific to this generation. So you asked, what are my priorities? My priorities are the same as I think most students. So that is to care about our planet, because as one of the largest school boards in Ontario, we have a really big influence over other school boards and, on Ontario's environment ourselves. And we have the opportunity to create a lot of, environmental leaders in the school board. So that's why I chose environmentalism. Mental health is just something I think has always been important because I've struggled with it myself as a high achieving student. And I know that a lot of other students are struggling with it, especially during the pandemic with things moving kind of online. So that's something that, even though they're providing us with all these resources, there's no shortage of resources. But it's kind of looking at, why don't people want to use them? What are we doing that's like preventing students from accessing help, or how are we presenting these resources? And finally, financial literacy is not something that people always think about because, it doesn't really concern them now because maybe their parents are paying for stuff. But I think it's something that we forget is really going to affect our future. As soon as we get out of school, we have to look at, student loan debt and finding jobs, and we have to be completely financially independent, even though it's a bit of a transition. And I think that we need to be more proactive in learning about that before we get to the point where it's like, okay, I need to know how to do this right now.
Yes, I think your point about mental health is particularly interesting because I know a lot of people like they do have mental health problems and they do know that the resources are there, but they don't use them for various reasons. And I think so that's a very interesting point that you bring up. And so on the next point is, in talking to a lot of students and classmates about the selection, like a lot of people they don't like care too much on on student trustees and their roles. So what do you think the problem is with like this sort of disconnect with student trustees, and how we like engage students to be more active in this area?
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I've also noticed this disconnect. Even in myself, I didn't know what a student trustee was until maybe a year ago at the last election. So I had no idea that there was like, wow, there's this person that's sitting in at the board meetings to like represent my voice. So it was really surprising for me. And I don't know, I think that disconnect exists because it's not really a social media problem. Like the student trustees have their own pages, like they advertise themselves. It's in those little handbooks we get at the beginning of every year. I think it's just not talked about in day-to-day student life. We're not like, hey, did you meet our trustees? Because they do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. But I think to remove that disconnect, there just needs to be more, like the student trustees need to play a more active role within each community, because there are like 33 secondary schools and over 100 elementary schools in the YRDSB. So it's hard to target every single one of them. But if we could use some kind of student trustee engagement initiative that would be implemented at all the schools to raise awareness about this, then that would really benefit people because they know there's someone there and they could share their ideas and things that are bothering them that they might have otherwise stay silent about. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I think that was yeah, that answered it quite well. So I think this will be our last question, which is,
Yeah.
so an issue that's prevalent at my school, and I think in a couple of other schools, is student voices. There's a sort of lack of it in administrative areas. And so how will you ensure that student voice is heard at, like, if you're elected as student trustee, at the board table and taken into consideration in decisions?
Mhm. So I completely agree with you. There is a big lack of student voice. And because, we are we make up the YRDSB. Like this whole school board was created for us. So I think we should be able to be a part of shaping it and deciding what's going on. So how would I project student voice? I think, and I've talked about this in the debate and on Instagram and stuff, but I think it's really about being proactive, not just having regular town halls to wait for people to come to you. Because, like we mentioned in the last question, a lot of people don't know that student trustees exist or they don't care. But I think it's about going into those communities. I know there are a lot of different associations for different, minorities and stuff like that. I think it's about actually meeting with their leaders, setting up those engagements, and then discussing them, asking them what's concerning you right now, what can I do to help, because that way you're actually making sure that you're meeting with as many people as you can and you're hearing their voice instead of waiting for them to come to you. So I think also by making sure you have a really great diversity, a great representation of who actually makes up the YRDSB, because I know there are a lot of different groups. If you're able to bring that to the board table to make sure that as many voices as you can are heard and projected through your own ideas, for me, that would be the ideal way to ensure that, student voices are heard.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us today and for answering our questions, I guess. So are there any final words you would like to say?
I just want to encourage everyone to vote, because I know your whole organization is kind of like for political engagement. And one way that students can do that, because they can't vote at the federal elections or provincial ones, but they can vote in student trustee elections. And I think that's really important for, their daily lives, picking a leader that will care about what they have to say and will advocate for their concerns. That's really important. So please vote in the elections.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.
You
Have
too.
a good day too.